Welcome to the Encounter Faith Podcast. My name is Ross, and I am thrilled to be sitting down with my friend Elisabeth Lectka again. Elizabeth, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Ross.
I hope you like my podcast voice as much as I do.
Yeah, you certainly, can turn it on. You got that voice.
So we are looking ahead through the past couple of weeks. We've been talking about this series that's upcoming for folks here at Good Shepherd called Throwback. And it, as has been true in the past couple of conversations, dear listener, I'm having this conversation with Elisabeth before this series even starts, really. And yet I know that talking about when we went through spiritual formation, how people are formed, what discipleship can look like for people, is something that you could talk for about 6 hours about. So
sure could.
In the next 25 minutes, we're going to try to nail some of these key points. But what I want to lean in on first, you are someone who you've been following Jesus for a long time. And in the context of this series, you're going to be talking about what faith looked like really specifically in the 2010's. Mm-hmm. Very recent history for some folks, but also for some folks like you and I, was the spiritually formational decade for us.
For sure.
What I'm curious about is, as you are someone who has emerged into ministry right after the 2010's, right after being spiritually formed, what stands out to you as you look back at that time?
I think I just have to start personally.
Yeah.
Because I really started following Jesus as a junior in high school, which was 2009.
Sure.
So for me,
that sound you hear is a few people going oh no, I was doing X at 2009.
I know.
Yeah.
But for me, the 2010's were this time of what does it mean to follow Jesus?
Yeah.
So this was a deeply formational decade for me as I was trying to figure out, what does it mean to follow Jesus? How do I follow Jesus with my life? What's my calling? What's my purpose? These were big, big questions I was wrestling with. So even as I was just thinking about, what was happening in the world in the 2010's, looking up some of the things that the keywords or, hot topics of that time, I was those really did affect me. So thinking about my life, I really found Jesus in 2009, 2010-ish, that year of school. I graduated in 2011 from high school. 4 years, graduated college in 2015. Spent my first 2 years of ministry abroad in Germany from 2015 to 2017. 2016 election happened abroad
right,
for me, which gave me such a perspective on American politics while I was living in Europe.
Sure.
And then I started ministry at Good Shepherd in 2017, and I've been here since. So, just my formational time in ministry of how do I study the Bible? How do I pray? How do I make big decisions? What am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do with my major? I changed my major in college. How do we discern these things? Do I have a call to ministry?
Yeah.
What does that look like for me? All of that happened in this season. And I realized was a lot more formed by kind of the things that were happening at the time than I even realized in my own little personal journey.
Yeah. But what I like, knowing a little bit of your story, what I like about having this conversation with you in 2025, looking back a relatively short amount of time, is one of the first things that you wind up doing, like you just said, you started your ministry abroad. And I'm fascinated by folks who take steps like that, because it reflects what I think is true for everybody, which is when we first start following Jesus, it is easy to say yes to stuff. Mm-hmm. It is easy to take some of these big steps, and often not nearly for everybody, obviously, but often in those formational times, God is gentle with us. God is honoring of the newer faith that is happening for people. And I experienced that. I didn't go to Germany, but what I'm curious about is, now that you've been here doing ministry for, I'm not a math person, this would be where I talk to your husband 4 to 5 times as long as you were in Germany.
Yep.
I'm curious how you look back at that time. What stands out to you about that experience this many years later?
Mm-hmm. I think I think for me, especially through my like college, young adult years, there was a lot of reliance on authority figures around me.
Oh, sure.
Like people who were mentoring me, like the staff people who were long-term staff there. And this is where like for my generation, for the 2010s, like deconstruction was a big word. Still is a big word, I think.
But it was more of a philosophy than a cottage industry.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like, this is happening. What is happening? And I think in those times I was so influenced by the authority figures around me.
Sure.
That like, when they said, hey, go talk to that stranger and tell them about Jesus, I was like, cool, show me how to do it. Like I was like, show me what it looks like to follow Jesus, and found myself in some conservative and evangelical circles that like I would not be comfortable with now.
Sure.
But I look back on that time and I go, whoa, like God still worked in those places.
Yeah.
And it has given me so much more of appreciation for leaning into, the divided world we find ourselves in, is like, hey, God still worked. Mm-hmm. I was in a place with people who did not give me ministry roles because I was a woman, who told me like, oh, isn't it so great that we don't have to bear the burden of being a pastor? Like I had someone tell me that. That was the first time I heard that was when I was 20 years old, which is a crazy thing in and of itself, because I grew up at Good Shepherd. That's my reality.
Yeah.
The first time someone said that to me, I was 20, and that was the kind of conservative evangelical circle I was in.
Which,
like, I just kind of took it and was just like, sure, okay. And then I needed to get out of those spaces to be like, oh, I can take some of this with truth.
Sure.
I can honor some of the things that I discovered here and the ways I encountered God. And it's okay to like set these other things aside that I disagree with without throwing the whole thing out.
Yeah. It's okay to inhabit different parts of the kingdom, to give, as you can probably hear in my voice, dear listener, more grace than I would like to give in this moment.
But I think like those people were my friends. Like they taught me German. Like they helped me navigate, public transit systems, like find my apartment. Like those were people I did life with, specifically in that time of 2 years in Germany. Like these were people I was trying to figure out how to do ministry, and they were affirming some of my gifts and my callings. I have a gift of hospitality. They were affirming of that.
Sure.
And that's great. But I could sense in me in that time that like, oh, there's more I want to do here.
Yeah.
But they weren't people I could wrestle with a calling to seminary.
Sure.
They were people who were trying to give me places and spaces to test out other gifts. And I didn't necessarily always realize that at the time.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, I have a lot of grace because they tried to love me really well in their in our theological differences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's intriguing to me because, you and I started following Jesus in 2011. I'm only a couple years older than you, but I look 25 years older than you, which is much more of a commentary on me than it is on you. But one of the things that stands out to me about starting to follow Jesus during that decade is, I know, and I'm sure you actually know more folks who were kind of running with you for a while, who now have deconstructed completely.
Yeah. Yep.
What I hear in how you describe all that is a very earnest search about identity, about your role in the kingdom, about calling. And thankfully, you, as someone who's pastoring to me right before I hit record here, guys, you had the space and the resources and the natural giftings to pursue your calling through some of those speed bumps along the way.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, like there was stuff that you're responding to that you weren't even aware of. Not in a condemning way, as Pastor Greg would say, this is a no judgment zone. But why do you think your story is different than some of the folks you were running with who have deconstructed so completely?
Yeah. Part of that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because part of that is a mystery of how God works.
Sure.
Like, God, how did I, like my college freshman roommate. Like we went total random placement, got placed in a room together, and like we were best friends within a week.
Sure.
Went into the same sorority, found the same Christian club. Like I felt like she was a mile ahead of me in terms of spiritual maturity, and we're in the same stage of life now, and she has no interest in going to church. And part of that for me is like, oh God, why did we end up in such a different place than Emily and I did, or Emily and you did? And so part of that is mystery of God's grace. I think also like community and calling. Like I very much felt a gradual call to ministry. And I had examples of that, of women going into ministry.
Sure.
I knew that was like, yeah, I can do that. That's a thing I can do. I had to wrestle with my own theology because of that exposure in college, but it wasn't a deep-seated my whole life.
Sure.
And I know for Emily, she was in more conservative spaces, grew up in a little more rural Indiana, so she had a different experience than I did. And as she left college and was kind of wrestling with that, she was in like bars and restaurants as kind of her career, wanting to like own her own business and kind of do that realm, and found herself in a different place without the community, didn't have the calling to ministry, was wrestling in these conservative circles while she was trying to figure out, okay, what's the role of the church in the world? And I think that's part of it. Is like, do you have safe space to be able to wrestle with your questions and people aren't going to like judge you for it? Do you have a clear sense of your calling and moving in that direction and seeing the ways God is moving and pointing you in that direction? And there's also a personal investment. Like, am I confident enough in my own relationship with God that when it is challenged, I can stay in that direction?
Yeah.
And that I just use Emily as an example because we were so closely knit over the years. But I think one of the things I reflect on when I see my friends who have walked away from the church is a big wrestling with the integrity of the church. Like, are we who we say we are? Yeah. And that's a big thing of the 2010s is a wrestling with, hey, church, do we care about the poor and sick? Is our money where our mouth is? Yeah. And is there alignment and integrity with who we say we are and the actions that we're doing? And for many of my friends who have walked away from the church, they don't feel that. And so that's a core part of their deconstruction is these people are hypocritical and not who they say they are.
I say this a lot. I feel like depending on what study you read, 60 to 80% of adults in the church came to the church between the ages of 4 and 14. And one of the things that I don't think the church talks about enough is how easy it is to not be in the church. Yeah. Like if you talk to Elisabeth about what her schedule looks like, it is very easy, dear listener, for you to make a different choice with your life. Yeah. Because you've never been to Sunday brunch. Or at least it's been a really long time.
It's been a really long time. Sounds nice.
Right? I'm sure it looks nice on Instagram. And I joke about that, but I think the reckoning that you saw in the 2010s was both space for people to do that openly, right? Rather than feeling like they had to hold that in or do that behind closed doors. They were given this gigantic wasteland known as the internet to wrestle with their faith publicly. Yeah. And you saw people, I would argue people who walk down similar roads like you have, who wrestled with it openly, and that actually led them to a deeper engagement in who Jesus is and a calling for the church to honor its integrity. Yeah. And folks like you help give grace to folks like who you're describing who wound up in a different place. Because I think too often that story plays out in a different decade and that person is then shunned by a church. Which we now know is one of the most harmful responses.
Yeah. And I think that's really, that's the hard role of the church when people are questioning, because it is unsettling. It's unsettling to me when there's someone I know and love who is wrestling with, is Jesus even worth following?
Yeah.
Like, somebody else raising questions can cause me to feel on shaky ground, because questions are hard. And the more we feel confident in the things that we believe, sometimes it feels like the easier life is. And I think when I think about my journey in the 2010s, I got to 2019 and had a significant mental health challenge, like severe anxiety and depression over the course of a few months, that caused a lot of wrestling with God. And that was a period of, like, within a few months, significant, like, tearing down of deconstruction and building back up. It was wild. But I think about my own sort of wrestling and deconstruction, and I had to grow comfortable over the decade with the idea of mystery. Like, when I was in college, I was so set on, like, okay, if I'm going to share the gospel with someone, what are all the answers? What are all the questions they might ask? And how do I preemptively respond to them? And, like, that's
a really good example.
I mean, I had a small notebook I took with me when I was an intern in Germany, and I tallied the countries of people that I talked to and the number of people that I talked to and how many times I shared the gospel. And I look back on those 2 years.
Man, you and I had different early mission fields, bro.
Yeah. It was like very evangelical, share the gospel.
Yeah.
It's
great. I want to be clear about that. Yeah.
But not in the numbers and tallies.
Yeah.
Like, I have grown to the place where I'm like, it's not about a singular decision to follow Jesus. Like, if I get someone to, like, say yes to Jesus and then I never see them again, I have failed in the role of discipleship, because, like, Jesus walks with us. That's the whole thing. I can't just count someone as a tally on my sheet and then walk away. But in that time, I was so focused on truth and certainty that then when I encountered questions later on, it really shook me.
Sure.
And so my journey, really, by the time the next decade rolled around, my, like, word of the year in 2020 was mystery. LOL.
Yeah.
Like, my therapist now asks me every year, like, hey, what's the word of the year?
Sure.
And, like, 2020, we chose mystery.
Wow.
And
so in February.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. And that has been a significant word for me, of being comfortable with the fact that God is mystery.
Yeah.
Because
that's great.
he is. He reveals himself to us in specific ways, but also God is mystery.
Yeah.
Which means it's okay if I have mystery too. And it's okay if my friends are in seasons of mystery too. And I can sit in the midst of that with them, because that's part of being incarnational with them, is understanding that, like, hey, big questions are okay. We don't have to know everything. The journey of life isn't about knowing everything. And that has made me a much better minister and leader, because I have grown more comfortable with mystery. That's my personal journey. And I know that that's very difficult for other people. I sit down with high schoolers all the time and I'm like, hey, don't have an answer for you there. And I know it unsettles them.
Yeah.
But that's part of, I think, a necessary journey in sort of deconstruction and polarization and kind of divided camps, is understanding that, like, hey, certainty is not the goal.
Yeah.
Like, being right, not the goal. Trusting Jesus involves being comfortable with what we don't know.
Yeah.
That we don't have to know it all, and that it's okay to sit in a mysterious place because God is there with us.
Oof. Whew. Okay. So
it's like, these are like personal journey things that I have been wrestling with for a long time, but that's like,
you're preaching, man.
I think for me, when these like trends and big concepts of 2010, that's the way it's personally affected me. Watching my friends walk away from deconstruction, walk away in kind of deconstruction movements. For me, it was like, whoa, I have those same questions. What do I do about it when my calling is to be a pastor?
Yeah.
And so I had to wrestle with those things. And that's for this season, that's where God has led me, is to be navigating mystery and uncertainty and
while leading. I love all of that. And I think particularly because the other group of people that message is for is those of you who have been following Jesus your whole life. Those of you who have, I'm going to use the phrase like, have not been in positions all that often of being outside the church. Like if I asked you, dear listener, to list all your friends right now and everyone you list is a Christian, I don't mean that as an indictment. I mean that as that is a cultural reality for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, certainly because I've experienced in my own life, that can breed certainty as well.
Yeah.
And
echo chambers.
And a lot of equally unhelpful stuff that's equally unhelpful as deconstruction can be. Mm-hmm. Because I think to a certain extent, what Elisabeth is describing, like that is a journey that all of us wind up going on. One of the things that I think for older generations or even younger generations now, what I think they see for folks who were formed during the time that you were formed is people who have, when they're at their healthiest, an openness to mystery like you're describing, who are willing to use language we'd use around here, pursue unity under mission without expecting uniformity, because the church was guilty of expecting a lot of uniformity. And also, one of the things that I really love about what you described is like your identity while embracing the mystery wasn't changing. And I think especially for younger generations, that's a harder thing to grasp because things feel even as uncertain as things have felt for us. Things feel even more uncertain for them.
Yeah.
What I'm curious about is, and as for you, it's particularly, I've been asking this question for everybody, like for this series. There's a benefit in looking back. There's a benefit in seeing what God's been up to. But it can also become dangerous. It can also become nostalgia. It can also become prioritizing personal preference and idols and all that.
Yep.
Your ministry career is such where you have led people through various like mountaintop type of experiences. Working with students, camp was a regular part of your calendar year after year after year. I'm curious how you navigate the tension of going like, man, God showed up at this mountaintop experience. You just went camping with your on a retreat with your family over the past week on vacation, like even something like that, without turning it into an idol.
Yeah. I think the way that I talk about it and think about it now, I talk about this when we do confirmation classes, Ebenezer moments, like that this is a rock in the ground, a building block, or even just a mile marker along the way, that like, that's what God did in that moment. These are the things that God was revealing then. And for me, I think about even my moments throughout college and like post grad years that I was in significantly different theological circles than I am now. I can point back to those moments and go, yeah, wow, God showed up there. It wasn't that all was for nothing. I don't toss the whole thing out, but like, okay, God showed up there, God showed up there, God showed up there. He will keep showing up tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And I think that's part of what's cool about this throwback series is that we're able to kind of point out some of those things that God was doing like widespread culturally at the time. And also because we kind of have different ages speaking to it, there's the personal interaction of like, this is how this affected me in that time.
Right.
And I think that's a little bit of a healthier way to look at it. The nostalgia is really easy because our current reality is hard.
Yeah.
The thing is, our current reality is always going to be hard. Like God is always going to be unearthing new things. God is always going to be moving us closer to him because we're sinful and broken and like we're not who God has made us to be. So there's always going to be things individually, culturally, society, as a whole world that we need to be working through to move towards God. Some things that we need to learn multiple times because we didn't learn it the first time.
Yeah, turns out.
And so nostalgia for the way things were doesn't address what's going on in the present.
Yeah.
And so thinking of movements, generations, significant moments in my life as Ebenezer moments instead is a helpful way to mark my relationship with God, to say, hey, God, you got me there. Like, you showed up there. Mm-hmm. I remember in that time I was doing this sort of thing. I had these types of questions and you answered. So I can trust that tomorrow you're going to answer me too.
Yeah.
And understanding that, like, yeah, there was light in there. He's the same today. And he was yesterday, today, and forever. That's consistent with his character. And so celebrating what God has done helps me to trust him with the future, whatever that looks like.
Thank you for listening to the Encounter Faith podcast. This podcast is a service of G. Shep Productions from Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Naperville, Illinois. All rights reserved. If you're in the area, we'd love to meet you on a Sunday morning at our 9 a.m. or 10:45 services. At Good Shepherd, we are inviting everyone to walk together in the calling of Christ for a life of eternal impact. This podcast is produced and hosted by me, Ross Cochran, and our theme song is Wake the Earth by 1111 Worship. Thank you for listening. We'll talk again soon.